Welcome to KIMEcast, where we break through and cut the BS in sports medicine, rehabilitation, and sports performance, and talk about how things really work. All right, welcome to KIMEcast. I'm Tony Mikla.
Evan Hager.
So we're going to talk today about myofascial release, self-myofascial release, using these different tools like a foam roller or maybe even one of those canes that you put over your shoulder, different balls that people lay on and grind on. We see people on a gym floor just rolling around like crazy. And then that versus stretching versus some dynamic movements. What's the most important? What sequence should you do it in? And what makes the most sense for you to get back to where you want to be? So, but we got to have a beer first. So
okay, let's go beer.
Get this dialed in.
We have a Racer 5. This is a popular one. This is of one of those generic ones we hadn't had yet, but I think it's a solid beer.
I've heard great things. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, that'd be nice. I can't remember the last time I had this so I can't say if it's good or bad, but
we'll find out.
I heard it's good. I think we should do like a Coors Light one time, just get really, or like a Pabst Blue or something like that. It'd be classic.
Like Russ Shotgun it or something?
Yeah, that would be good for sure. So we see folks do this all the time with their tissue work, and everyone's got soreness, everyone's got muscle tightness, especially if you're in the fitness community and you're working out, or if you're in the athletic community and you're out training. That goes along with the game as part of the process. So the question is, what do I do about it? I think people have, they've read things on stretching, or they've heard things on stretching. People have kind of really downplayed stretching. I think over the last decade, maybe 15 years, stretching's gotten a really bad name. Like, don't do it. It makes your muscles weak. It decreases the ability of them to activate and be strong. So stop stretching. People have kind of gone down that road, and then they've gone to this, let's roll on the ground on these different devices. And it's gone from kind of a soft ball that's a little bit squishy to something very, very firm.
Or with like crazy knobs on it and all these different like jagged edges. It's gotten a little absurd.
It has, yeah. And then we've got tempering, where you're taking your 45-pound bar and putting it on you. And I've seen these other like metal that look like a pill type shape, where they're like,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, heavy metal pill, and you take that and they kind of roll that down through their thighs and just these deep pressures, which all has actually good scientific meaning. So we'll talk about that, but we'll also talk about like maybe when to do that, how much of it to do, in comparison to other things that are important. If you just do that by itself, and then you're going to miss a big chunk of your improvement. What we see with that is it's a neurological reset at the end of the day. We see that this deep pressure, no matter what device you use. So if you use one of those heavy pills, you use a barbell, you use a ball, you use a foam roller, when you're putting pressure down, body weight through it, and it's fairly deep, prolonged pressure, we see the stimulation, and the science suggests it's the stimulation of these Ruffini endings. And when you stimulate these Ruffini endings, you're going to get this down regulation or this decrease in tone of the muscle. So essentially the muscle will relax and let go to some degree.
And I think the most important thing to kind of start with, so with all that being said, is we can't do any of this stuff without an objective, right? So you go into the gym and you see people rolling real fast over the foam roller, and you say, what are you doing here? What's your goal? And they're like, oh, my quad's really tight. Well, you just said that's not the right way to get that thing to relax, right? So we have to come back to like some version of an assessment, whether it's a self-assessment or whether it's an assessment with a professional, and then there needs to be a goal, and then what you're doing has to be driven by the goal. And so if the goal is to reduce the tone in the tissue, if we've got this tight quad or this tight whatever, then deep pressure, down regulation via those Ruffini endings is going to be the best way to get it to relax. But then, like you said, that's only step one. So once we've got this tissue to relax, we then have to go lengthen it. So if the issue was high tone and tight, we down regulate, then we go put them in a lengthened position. So if it was a quad, you might put them in like a heel to butt or like a couch stretch kind of position. And then the next step of that would be that we need to maybe now use it in that position. So we've lengthened it passively. Now we need to figure out a way to actively control it. So that could be a lunge position or a step up position, or even a bigger version of that would be a rear elevated split squat. But we've got to take that tissue, down regulate it, lengthen it, and then figure out a way to now use that new length so we can really lock in that change to make it meaningful.
100%. If you don't use what you've gained, then you're just going to go back and lose it. So it's a use it or lose it system.
The changes are transient, and we don't know how long they last. I think there is some research out there to discuss it, but we're talking like minutes, not days. So if you don't take advantage of that, then you're stuck.
Absolutely. So we see when you're using a deep pressure tool, any of those tools are fine. It just depends on, what's right for you and how intense you want to be. Some people love like a lacrosse ball and super firm and they love that. I think it's a little too firm. I think it's a little too intense for most people to truly relax. For me, yeah, I appreciate that. But when you consider, like, if this is the thing I would say, is if you're laying on top of this ball or this device is putting pressure on you and you feel like you're tensing up because of the pressure and it's hurting you, then you're missing the point if the goal was to get relaxation, right? So we want to be able to put enough pressure in where you can feel like you can actually relax. And I think I like to have people think about the tissues just melting away, and as you're putting pressure down, there's this melt effect and things are relaxing and letting go. And now the evidence on this, the research shows that it might take you a better part of 90 seconds of just holding pressure to actually see these changes. So this is not a 30-second stretch or a 20-second foam roll. This is a minute and a half to 2 minutes of time at the minimum in many cases. So
or shorter or longer. I think the research
varies.
is kind of out. It's like 1 to 5 minutes, right? So
exactly.
The answer isn't like 90 seconds. The answer is, like you said, when it relaxes. People
when
always
relaxes.
ask, how long do I do this? You're like, when it's done.
You do it. You do it until it changes.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
And then once it changes, you're talking about, as Evan mentioned, you're talking about maybe a few minutes of a window. You've really just opened an opportunity. You haven't changed anything permanently. All you've done is told your brain, hey, relax this muscle, let it go. And then once that's happened, now you've really got to do something to truly lengthen that tissue so that it actually can maintain the length, and then teach it how to stay in that position. So those are the next key steps. So stretching's become this thing like, oh, let's not stretch. It kind of down regulates as well. It's also a down regulator similar to deep pressure. But we find stretching to be a really good tool to use, especially after activity. So if you've done a heavy weight workout, you've done a heavy sprints, you've done a heavy athletic workout, your body's going to be a little bit more higher tone, muscles are going to be a little bit tighter. Doing a long, prolonged stretch activity can be great to restore your neural range of motion. Mm-hmm. If you want to do some deep pressure first and then stretch, that's great. Both have a very similar scientific impact, but everybody's different, so you have to choose what's the best option for you. But we really like a static stretch at the end of activity or as a recovery tool. We don't use it as much pre-activity. So it's definitely something we do more post.
But that doesn't mean you don't lengthen tissues pre-activities.
Absolutely.
I mean, pre-activity, you have to still go get into all those lengthened positions. And so people's counter is like, well, if you don't put them there, then how can they then go achieve that on the field? Well, you still put them there, but you might do it more dynamically. And I think that's extremely well proven in the research at this point.
Yep.
But might there be times where stretching would be an effective tool before an activity?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, depending on what the activity demands. Yeah.
Sure, right. Depending on the activity demands, or depending on what the deficit is. I mean, we see people in here with true range of motion deficits, and there are times where that probably is the right tool, or is a tool that you can use. And often, I can't think of very many times where, personally, I will just stretch somebody. There's probably some version of down regulation before, and even if it's not done with the foam roller or with the lacrosse ball or with one of those other tools, maybe we're doing it with some of our manual therapy techniques. All those same concepts apply. The other thing to consider with those tools, you talked about maybe lacrosse ball or foam roller, or why you use it. You might use it partly for preference, but also partly for the body part you're working on. You're not going to take a foam roller on the back of your shoulder.
Right.
You need something that actually fits the mold there. The bottom of the foot, like a golf ball, is perfect. You need something small you need something to fit those parts of the body.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got this idea of use some deep pressure to really kind of get the tissues to relax a bit and take the edge off, essentially create an opportunity. And then you're going to do some prolonged stretching. And the prolonged stretching, the evidence is similar, like it's anywhere from 30 seconds to usually a minute and a half or so 30 to 90 seconds, somewhere in there on your stretch holds. And then you've got this reactivation, this using of it. If you do all that and then you just go sit in a chair for the next hour, or you go sit in the car for a 30-minute drive home, well, guess what? It's just going to go back to what it was before, because what you did was way more dominant in your workout or in your daily life, was way more dominant than the 10 minutes you just spent doing a little myofascial release and a little bit of stretching. So you've got to do something to use it. So this might be a time if you're doing a dynamic warm-up. Our dynamic warm-up is very particular, where we're using every plane of motion. We want people to move linearly, we want people to move laterally, we want people to move rotationally, so they move in all three planes of motion. And we work on gaining more and more depth in those motions, both the lower extremity and the upper extremity and the trunk, so that you're exploring all these different movements, and you teach your body how to use them and how to control each of those planes.
You brought up a really good point there, though, with the range of motion. So I think with how people use it, right? So it's you do the drill for 30 seconds, then you go back to sitting for 8 hours. Like it really, all of that really does matter. We know that our structure, so what we're fighting against all the time, what people are fighting against with themselves in the gym, that our structure is very much dictated by the positions that they're in and the way they train their body most of the time. And so 30 seconds of foam rolling for down regulation is not going to counteract 9 hours of sitting, 9+ hours of sitting on any given day. And that you really do have to have some element of maybe like tipping the scales a little bit more. You need to have something that's gonna match that to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well researched, right? Is that this idea of sitting for 6 to 8 hours, that doing a 30-minute workout or a 60-minute workout does not offset that. So that's kind of the American way and been the standard for years to be like, oh, I can go sit and I can do my normal work job, sitting in my cubicle or sitting at my desk, and then boom, I'll get out and I'll exercise, I'll go for a run, I'll do this, and I'll offset it. That is not what has been shown whatsoever. This constant movement throughout the day is really one of the keys to success there. So keep that in mind, that a little bit of stretching once a day is probably not going to get the job done, but being moving throughout the day and moving dynamically throughout the day is going to be kind of your keys to long-term health. But
So I think the most important thing here is that it's goal-oriented, that we have an objective with what we're doing. So we've talked about the objective of down-regulating, which I think the majority of the time probably is the goal, right? That's the majority of the goal with people we're working with, and the majority of people that are using those tools, that's kind of what they're trying to achieve, is some kind of relaxation.
Yeah, they all say I'm tight, right? I feel like if my muscle's tight, it's just really tense, I got to loosen it up.
But there's other versions of this too. So those tools we could also use for potentially for different regions. What about like ramping the system up? How do we do that?
Yeah. So that's just it. So we've talked about down regulating and holding pressure for a long period of time. Well, the opposite of that would be to put pressure down in a very like oscillatory way. So you're like, it's coming and going, or you're like vibrating the tissue, or you're rolling back and forth.
Quickly,
Yeah. So we see this all the time. People are like, oh, I'm trying to loosen up my IT band, and they're laying on the foam roller, rolling up and down their IT band at 10 times a minute. And it's like, well, that's actually oscillatory, and the fact that you're going back and forth is going to stimulate the muscle tissue. It's going to activate it, and it's going to get tighter. It's not going to have this inhibitory effect that you hope for.
It's going to create more tone, right? And so those are the people that come in. I mean, this happens all the time. They come in, man, I've been rolling my AT band for 30 minutes a day, and it's not getting any better. And you're like, yeah. You're probably not doing it right.
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we use, if you're trying to decrease tissue tone or relax your muscles, which is majority, like Evan said, majority of the goal here, you can think of more of a search and destroy method, where you might roll up and down the IT band with a foam roller, find a spot that's sensitive or tender, and then just lay there, hold pressure on that, take some deep breaths, and just kind of let that be for whatever long it takes. If it's 30 seconds, great. If it's 90 seconds, I feel for you, but that's kind of what it's going to be.
I like that search and destroy. That's like a little battleship reference.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Nice. So, okay, so we said with down regulation that the changes are transient. We have to go do something with it. In my experience, and I haven't seen research on this, but in my experience, that up regulation is even more transient. You've got a very brief moment in time to then go really, really use that. And so that wouldn't be then putting somebody in a lengthened position. That would be making them use it. So, I mean, an example could be somebody with, a foot, an arch that collapses, right? So maybe you want to upregulate the tissue on the bottom of the foot, stimulate some things, and then go put them in a position where they've got to use it. And that really has to happen fast. So, like, order of operations here, if you're like, down regulating the quad and up regulating the foot, you do the up regulation last, you go use it then, and then you can jump into the quad after. Like that has to happen so immediately from my experience.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the best that I've seen, like, live demonstration of this concept of this up regulation concept, which is great. So like pre-activity, say you're going to go, run a track meet, run a sprint, or you're going to do a vertical jump, or you play basketball, or a high intensity sport where you want to maximize your performance, doing some up regulation where you're doing some either vibration work, you're doing some quick oscillations, or you're kind of getting your body ready. The best version I've seen of this is at the 100 meters. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch a 100-meter race and you go out and pull one up on YouTube, just watch Usain Bolt or something like that, pull up a YouTube video of the World Championships, the Olympics, and watch the top 8 guys in the world. And it's always a showmanship situation where they go through, announce everybody's name, everybody waves, but they're all standing out behind the blocks, right? But when they start to get down to their kind of minute and a half before you're going to take the blocks and before you're going to shoot the gun, pretty much it's exactly the same across the board. You see a series of activities. So here's what they usually will see. you'll see a quick ballistic stretch, like a quick toe touch. They go down really quick, touch the toes, come back up quick, fast, really, really fast, change of direction in an effort to kind of stimulate the system. Then you'll probably see a few tuck jumps. Well, they'll back there, they'll tuck jump, they'll bring their knees up, try to get a big vertical, boom, big bounce, right? 2 or 3 big tuck jumps. Maybe just one, but it's big explosive movement. So those are all activation oscillatory movements. And then as they go into the blocks, they'll kind of get themselves start to get set up. They'll shake the leg, right? So they'll shake one leg, and their muscles are like, huge. So there's huge vibration. Shake the other leg, right? And then you'll see them before they kind of take the blocks for the last time. They, neck back and forth, kind of shake their head back and forth. And then they'll slap their thighs. Slap the thighs, slap the hamstrings, maybe get down, slap the calves a little bit, but they hit themselves in the muscles, which again causes this vibration. Yep. So they do 4 different things in my experience. So they do this ballistic stretch, they do this big tuck jump, explosive movement, they do a slapping of the thighs, and then they'll do this kind of vibration oscillatory, like shake the leg or shake a body part, all vibrationatory to kind of stimulate the system. No one taught them to do this. This is a very innate, I feel faster when I do this stuff.
But you see this across lots of sports. Oh. Look at power lifters, Olympic lifters. Yeah. Those guys are hitting themselves in the face and smacking their legs and screaming, and after the smelling salts.
Right?
After they do all that stuff. But even football, you watch a guy come off the bench who hasn't been in a while. He's going to go out there and do some tuck jumps. He's going to. I mean, it's very similar across the board, and you're absolutely right. I played sports as a kid, and I wasn't taught those things. You kind of just learn to do them.
Right. So when you're doing vibratory work or quick oscillations or those kind of you moving things quickly, you're trying to ramp your nervous system up and get it ready so you can maximize your performance. So then when you drop into the blocks and the gun goes off, boom, you shot out like a cannon and you're ready to go. Now that, to Evan's point, this only lasts a very brief period of time. This is not something that's going to last more than minutes, probably less than a minute, really. It's very, very brief, but just ramps that system up, gets everything sharp, ready to go, and then boom, explode with it. So think about the same thing when you're doing these myofascial release drills. When you're, on the floor of the gym and you're rolling on something, if you're going back and forth fast, you're stimulating the tissue and you're kind of getting ready for activity. If you just had a workout, you might want to slow that down and move more towards the long holds, deep pressure strategies to get more relaxation and elongation of the tissue.
It's kind of really intuitive if you think about it, right? If you want something to relax, low and slow, and if you want to ramp something up, fast and quick. I mean, it really is kind of intuitive. And what we're really manipulating, we keep talking about manipulating tissues, but the reality is we're probably more manipulating the nervous system, right? We're playing with that kind of sympathetic versus parasympathetic portion of the nervous system, and we're just changing the tone in either of those and kind of getting the entire system more ramped up. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a thought process here of, when the guy smacks his thigh, I don't think that just his thigh is probably the piece that's activated here. I mean, we can say that maybe in that tissue, but I think there is much more of a systemic effect that's going on with all of this. And even with the down regulation, I think there's much more of a systemic effect going on.
Yep. We've seen that. The evidence supports that as well, is that there's this idea that you see this, it's a neurological tone that's changing more than anything. And so we look at this as creating an opportunity. Mm-hmm. It creates an opportunity for change. And then from here, you've really got to do something to own that new motion or to own that change that you've made. If you want it to become more of the norm, if you want to ramp up your tissue tone, then maybe you've got maybe on purpose you got a weak rotator cuff, and you're getting ready for a shoulder workout. You want to get that rotator cuff activated, get stimulated. Doing some quick oscillatory kind of rolling on a lacrosse ball against the wall might be a great idea. Doing some rapid oscillation, external rotations or scaption type movements, that'd be great things to kind of, hey, let's get this thing firing before I start into some press or some other shoulder activities. So there's definitely times to use that. And then there's times to use the opposite, like, hey, let's do long holds, let's go slow, let's recover, let's lengthen it out. Maybe I've got a tight psoas or I've got a tight gastroc and my calf is always tight, or I've got a plantar fasciitis and I've got this limitation. I might want to mobilize that and do some deep tissue work prior to workout so that I can get my motion to where it should be so that I can squat properly or deadlift properly or sprint or whatever the case may be. So you've got options, and you've just got to learn how to play with that tissue. Create an opportunity, but then create a way that you keep it. So if my goal was to activate tissue, like the rotator cuff example, if we did some rapid oscillations around the rotator cuff to activate it, did some rotator cuff drills, and then I want to use that tissue. So I might do a shoulder press or a one-arm row or a bench press or a push-up or whatever it might be.
So summing it all up, basically,
Yeah.
though, then it's you have a problem or you have a goal, essentially. Then you open the window, you open the neurological window, and then you do something with it. Whether if the goal was down, you relax and you stretch. If the goal was up, then you start moving quickly. So a goal, open the window, and then do something with it.
100%. Well said.
There we go.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to KIMEcast. This was KIMEcast, and we are the KIME Human Performance Institute. Thank you very much for listening. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. Please hop on our social media. It's at KIMEHPI and engage with us there. If you'd like us to feature a topic or answer any questions live on the show, post your comments there. You can also check us out on our website at KIMEperformance.com, and there you can see links to content that we've posted throughout our podcast for more information.